G'day, g'day, g'day. MathematicalKM here. Remember their initials, not a title. Keith Malumbi. Well, my most recent video was called 5-0 No More. Battling uphill against a player who'd had the wood on me for 5 games. This time around, I'm at 1408 and I'm playing Mark Stubbs, very strong player. And he has currently got me 2-0, once with white, once with black. So I could call this video 2-0 No More. And, 1592 to 1408, so it's at around about 190 uphill. But this is also the 4th hippo over the board win in a row. Sweet. Spoiler alert, bit late. But also it's 4 games immediately after the video called Do No Harm. It's been a focus, move by move, do no harm to the position, incremental improvement. Well, off we go with the white pieces. Let's take a look. I think a better title for this one will be The Night That Would Not Leave. So something to look forward to. Okay, here we go. We fianchetto. We start to go through the standard 10 moves. We don't get all the way through. Black is trying to get pretty active, pretty quick, and we're already only at move 5. So it's kind of the big centre on the queenside, covered in Solomon, Riddell, the Chess Giants course. And you can play the hippo against that. Starting to get the pieces out into the standard thick-skinned hippo. Queen's in an interesting place. One of the bishops hasn't moved yet. This knight's in behind the centre. I go with the H-pawn, the prophylaxis. The bishop can't get there, but I don't really want that knight coming in. And forgetting the E-pawn, or it's sort of half there, it's almost like 4 pawns. Real big old pawn storm coming on the queen side. Thankfully, when the time is right, I might castle kingside. And right now, it's actually the top move is to castle kingside. And bishop to b2 is finishing I haven't even finished all the piece moves for the thick-skinned hippo yet. But I am going, don't know if you'd call it lash out. Interesting that a3 is meeting the pawns with pawns. What I thought about was this one here, and it's protected by 2 pawns and a knight, and he only got 2 pawns attacking it. Try and open it up, have that fight on the queen side, and I'm ready to castle. So let's see what happens. So bang. B times c4 is the second best and played. B times c4 for me is best and played. What does black do now? This is the knight that would not leave. What is this? Move 11, it's come in. And I'm going to try and invite it to leave real soon, but just watch. It's got a big threat there with a undefended pawn and a check. How am I going to defend it? Computer likes queen out, but I can see rooks coming in on the same line and what have you. And getting that knight onto a semi-outpost, which is threatening that pawn, and it releases the queen to defend the pawn, is what I was thinking. So improving the knight, protecting the pawn. It's still -1 to black. You don't have the same space advantage when you play the hippo. It's usually around about -1 until it isn't, and often it does turn around. Okay, here we go. There is the invite. The invite for that knight to leave, and the invite was played on move 12. It's not going to move. Lots of strange and interesting tensions in this game, as we will see. There's tension on the c-pawn there. And and he takes on the c-pawn. And now that's an interesting way of defending his knight. If I take his knight, he takes my knight. Does that sound fair? Sounds fair till you realise it gives black a very strong pawn on b3. And with the queen backing it, even the following undoubled pawn to protect it, no. Do not want that pawn taking my knight. So I need to do something with my knight. I need to kind of look after my d-pawn as well. But just looking after the knight could well be enough, because if he just takes the d-pawn with his pawn, then his knight will fall. But if he took it with his knight and had the check, and I'm not going to take his knight back with my queen, no way. So really, the only thing I can do, because there's those two pieces, is open that d file and take his c-pawn. Let's have a look. I didn't even look at the computer there. D times c4 is the top move. No, second top. It's thinking about it. It's certainly in there. Knight to c6. Is interesting, but the d times c4 seems to be the way to go. Oh, that was his move. Sorry, my bad. A times b4 is best, giving him that strong pawn. No, wait. D times c4, second best, played. Okay, he's brought a bishop, threatening my bishop, which is currently hanging. So I need to... And we're up to move 14. How long's that knight that wouldn't leave been there? Quite some time. But I can't spare the time to take it now. I've got to do something about my bishop. I can take his, but I feel like that's just helping him develop. I liked castling and played. So I've got... There's a bishop in there, but the rook, queen, rook, kind of bit of synergy a bit. And the king is protecting the bishop. He doesn't like that, so he snaps up the bishop. King has to take back. He brings his queen in. And that was a mistake. The defence, and this is move, 16, and I think we go to 52. So against a 200 elo higher opponent, holding on for the conversion is quite the struggle, and happy that I managed to do it. But the queen here was meant to be threatening a hanging rook. So I would have to move the rook and not take the knight. But the thing about this is, covered by the pawn, covered by a knight, covered by a bishop, and what Mark missed was knights can move backwards, covered by the knight. So now is the time, and you can see it jumps to 4.1, A times B4, and played. So from here, it's do no harm, and also the mission, where possible, is take trades. Because 6v5, is that what we have now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6v5 is nowhere as good as 2v1. So let's see how we go for the rest of this. He's brought his queen one step closer with check. And, did the computer like that? I thought that was, this pawn will be covered by the bishop. This pawn will be covered by the king. That one will be covered by the king and the knight, and that one will be covered by the king. So it's like I've moved all four of them forward one, and completely taking out the accessible 4th rank, accepting he will be able to take c4. And in fact, f3 was the top move, so yay me. It seemed like the best answer to that check. He wins the pawn. What are the problems we have now? It may become a problem, the queen doing double duty with these 2 knights. This pawn is not protected, the b pawn is hanging. The computer's top move is just let him have my pawn and go take his a pawn. Strangely enough, let's see what it drops to from 4.2. My plan was leave this one being protected by the queen, but swing the knight in and take that pawn. And it's not hope chess, but it's if he takes, we're in the business of trades. If the bishop takes the knight, we just take back, fine. If he takes the pawn with the queen, there might be ways to sneak out of it, but there will be a queen-rook fork that he'll need to find some defensive moves to not also go down and exchange. And let's see, so that one is hanging, but there is, there might be a price to pay for taking that pawn, especially if he takes it with the queen. He can take the knight with the bishop. He's not going to take the knight with the queen. Mark castles. Probably quite a reasonable move. Shame about that knight. He's giving me the opportunity to swing in for a different fork and lose my knight. Oh, actually, the queen's backing it up, but I decided to move my queen here because I had noticed that there and there, the queen, remembering we want trades, the queen can't move along that diagonal. The queen can't take the knight, or the pawn will get it. If the queen goes here, I can get the ladies off. Anywhere this way, and a pawn can take the queen off. Here, here, or here, or the queen gets these two, and the rook protects the bishop, or the other rook, or the knight. Take your pick. Here, the queen can take the queen, and here, the rook can take the queen. I wouldn't say the queen was trapped because it has got 2 viable options, but I like them both. For me, should the queen take my queen, the ladies come off because I come back and take with the knight, and what's more, the knight is then protecting my pawn, which is kind of cool. If the other choice was taking the pawn with the queen, in which case I throw in that up the exchange fork, which doesn't necessarily win the exchange because there are some defensive resources, but I think it does ensure that some sort of a trade's going to happen. Oh, we went through 2 moves there. And he takes the pawn with the queen, and why does that jump 2 moves? Needless to say, takes the pawn, the knight goes, he's got to move the queen or he'll lose the queen to the knight, and he's moved the queen to where, and this is how, it's quite clever really. If I was to take his rook with my oh so clever fork, his queen would take my queen, which is hanging. So I have forced him to offer me the queen trade. And, that's the biggest trade to get when you're trying to increase the advantage by being a piece up. So it's the biggest bestest piece on the board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus 4 now. 5 versus 4, you should feel a bit more than 6 versus 5. Let's get that knight central, threatening a few things, including the rook at the moment. He brings the rook over. For a little while here, I'm not sure, you'd have to ask Mark if he knew about it, but I was very much hoping that his rook would go back somewhere. I would like to put my bishop here so that it was lined up on a bishop and a rook, so that would force another trade. But I can't put the bishop here while he's got a rook and a bishop on it, and I would only have one rook protecting. So keeping this rook in the third rank is a good thing. Now, the bishop's protecting this pawn, by the by. How do I dig it out? Funnily enough, it's the top move. The king has got a rusty old sword of his own, so let's move the king across. And the king's on his way. It hasn't made the rook move yet. Okay, he's thrown a pawn at my knight. But, and let's take a look at this knight is covering those two squares. Between the two of them, that's 2 lots of firepower on A3. So if the bishop was to go to A3, it would be bad. And to cover those two, whenever you move a pawn, you make a weakness, and the weakness that was made was on F5. Let's move the knight there. And that bishop has to get off that diagonal now. And it does. It goes to D8. Let's see if I play king to E2, bringing that king to evict that rook. It's the best move. Nope. I instead centralise my other knight. And it's also having a crack at that rook where that rook is. So Mark lines his rook up with both the bishop, which is well and truly protected, but also this knight, which currently is hanging. So what do I do about the hanging knight? I move that knight to where it is threatening the rook, and I think we mentioned trades are good. Threatening a trade. It's at this point that, and it's actually Mark's top move. It's still plus 3.1 to white, but I was kind of expecting his knight to take my knight. But trades are still good for me, but it would double my F and E pawns, would both become E pawns. What does Mark play? Oh, and it would get rid of the threat of the knight taking the rook by killing the knight. But Mark moved his rook, and it gave to give a check as well. So it's I can't do anything much about it other than it was E1 or G1. I went with E1. There's 3.5 versus 3.2. I thought bringing the king towards the centre and then into the middle is soon going to be important. So it was second best. In with the king. Okay. He's protecting that pawn with the bishop and also lining the bishop up on a pawn which is only protected by the bishop at the moment, but the rook can't go there now, but he could potentially get a rook on it as well and try and win that e-pawn, which is an important pawn. But the best move for me, remembering trades are good, and I've been not that worried about it, but kind of expecting the potential for G6 to be played. Mind you, it would let the knight go with a check. Not sure how that would work out, but evicting my knight from F5 has been on the cards for a while. But right now, I've got the chance to double black's pawns, and the pawns are going to become important in the near future, and that's actually the top move. Comes with check, pawns are doubled, and let's ask for another trade. Does that go twice? He moves his rook back, he doesn't want to trade. I'm thinking about where am I going to double my rooks. I bring it here. Not sure. Let's see how. But rook to c5 is perhaps not the best move that could have been made. It's the old watch out putting pieces on the same diagonal, because I actually wanted to get my bishop out of the way so I could double my rooks anyway. And it's not as simple as you might think. You might think I'm going to go up an exchange here, the bishop takes a rook, but it's not necessarily the case. That double tap. He brings a rook over, and well done, Mark's given me a chance to go wrong here. Imagine, if you would, if I was to take that rook with the bishop, thinking, I'm going up the exchange. He could then take my rook with check. I'd have to move my king, and then he would take my bishop. I would have lost a rook and a bishop, and only won a rook. And it would have been back to even Stevens, and he's got a pawn over on the passed pawn on the A file there. But how to stop that is potentially, let's have the rooks supporting each other. And then, if it's still there, we've got a trade. So, my rooks are supporting each other. If he moves the bishop or anything like that, I can see that I've got potentially bishop to b4, but I mean really he's got to move the f rook at this point. And if he did move the f rook, there'd be certain bad places, like here would be really bad with forks and things. But anyway, what does Mark do? Working on his own plans, bringing that rook forward, thinking if I take his rook, then he can take mine and maybe get it back. But no, I think it works out better for me in the end here, because before we fire this all off, it's 4 versus 3. So let's go takes. He's moved that back. He's moved that back in a cunning plan. I think it costs him a piece to achieve it, but the cunningness is he will get rid of both of my rooks. Take his, and now this rook is pinned to the king. So he will be able to lose the bishop, but I will only have a bishop and a knight. It's interesting that he didn't go all the way. Maybe he wasn't happy with the plan as it stood. But at the moment, because the knight seals the g7, if I was free to move, that would be checkmate. So I let myself have the freedom to move. Blocking would just be silly. So he's pretty much forced to take the rook. Now, I mean, when you say that there might be some hope, it's already showing the big M, mate and 17 and what have you. But you've still got to put that on the board. And if all the pawns were to die, and you're technically meant to be able to checkmate with a bishop and a knight, I'm not sure I could in the 50 moves. But let's see, I had a little bit earlier, let's go back to when I moved the bishop back. There is a reason that I've moved the bishop back and not the king, and I've moved the bishop back, one, to save it, keeping that, and the knight, the king is boxed in, but also this was the choice and not somewhere else for a very important reason. Once this plays out there, I've got great hopes of turning 4 on 4 into 4 on 2 in this part of the world. And I think that plan, I mean, there's other stuff that may have given me the advantage to win the game earlier, but it's certainly, there goes the first pawn, there goes the second pawn, we've got 4 on 2. All we have to do is look after this A pawn, and then we should be able to get a pawn through, and then mate with that queen. Now, we need to box in this king. All the squares that king can't use. Potentially my knight is hanging and the king can come to g6, so this one forward got that square. Next move is probably e3, protecting the knight, and once e3's been played and the knight can't be taken, then that king is very much in a little box and can't hurt us for a while. And while that king's in a box, we can look after the A pawn and then come back and look after these pawns. So let's see, that was my thinking. A3, oops, we did the old double tap somehow. Move my king over to where it can grab that pawn. He brings his king to where it can take the knight, the move that was promised. E4, protecting the knight, and so that king is now in its little box, threatening the bishop. Bishop moves to where it can be the one to take the pawn. The king looks to come around. The bishop takes. Okay, and the king is looking to try and get some activity and get around behind our white pawns. But can't take, can't take, can't go, can't go, can't go. Can't go, can't go. That's what the black king. And what we do is bring the bishop back. Bishop's protected by the knight. And let's see, the bishop is covering these and these. The knight's there and there. The king can try and go the long way around. But he goes back hoping for a stalemate, which is, possible. Especially with all those pawns. But I've been looking to get my king to here so that I can advance the e-pawn. And if need be, if the e-pawn dies with the king helping, then it'll be walking the f-pawn in. So e-pawn forward. He doesn't take. And instead of taking back, which would have been a bit of a mistake, he would have then been able to take mine with his king, and it would have been a lot harder than let's just keep going with that e-pawn. And we will be able to get that through. And it's at that point in time that Mark shook my hand. So not down 2-0 anymore. That'll be the, looking at the graph, the move where not spotting that the knight can move backwards, trying to defend the knight by threatening the rook. And from there, relatively interesting, and I'm happy with my own play to close it out against a player 200 elo up. And accuracy, white 79.4, black 73.4. The great move was taking the knight and ignoring saying, go ahead, take my rook, because knights can move backwards. And for all my accuracy was a few points higher, heychess.com, explain this to me. I played at 2000 and my opponent who lost, he played a good game, he played at 2050. And again with the hippo getting in the 90s, with the mid-90s with the opening accuracy, 93.7. Forcing it open, that early attack on the queenside, 97.9 for my opponent. The middle game, 84 to 73.2. So just, once again, after the big moment of the do no harm game and taking that principle into my play, that is 4 over the board, 60-minute plus 30-second wins for the hippo with me. The first two, fair enough, they were against players playing their first over-the-board games. But the last two, Yozo had me 5-0 and Mark had me down 2-0. So do no harm. It's a maxim to take to heart. Bye for now.